Now, South Africa has slipped in the corruption index, which measures public sector perceptions of corruption around the world. Now ranked at 43, the country is back where it started in 2012, with very little upward movement over the past decade. The report paints a disturbing picture of an increasingly dangerous world. It highlights the link between corruption and conflict globally, and the threat that corruption poses to peace and security. Mzwandile banjathwa, campaign coordinator at Corruption Watch, joins me now just to talk a little bit more about this. It's quite disappointing to see that South Africa is not improving in terms of its standing in this corruption index by Transparency International.
Well, yes, it does. But being a South African, you would think that the situation would have been way worse than it actually is. I'm not sure if it's actually good that we haven't moved at all in the past 10 years, and we have been shifted in our ranking. Though that may not be entirely positive, but there's been plenty of things, of course, that have been done, particularly from the government side. Be it the commissions of inquiries that have been set up, the attempt to bolster various law enforcement agencies, and the creation of numerous other entities to sort of assist with corruption, and also the inclusion of various sectors of society in the fight against corruption might have played a role in sort of keeping South Africa at this particular position. But we were actually hoping for the worst.
So you were fearing the worst, but you think staying more or less in the same position is good news, even if when President Matamela Ramaphosa took over in 2018, there was this hope that corruption was going to be crushed.
Yes, I think that's one of the most disturbing outcomes, because the president entered into power via the bandwagon of anti-corruption. But ever since he's taken over, all of the major indicators, be it internationally or domestically, have been pointing to the worsening situation. Firstly, our reports as Corruption Watch have went up a lot over the past 5 years. The other measures, like the international barometers and the Afro barometers as well, have been very concerning, and some of which point to the office of the president itself, where members of the public are losing confidence in the office of the public, in the office of the president, and they are losing confidence in the police, citing them as one of the most corrupt entities. But the perception index in and of itself also points another disturbing picture, because in it speaks of a president who's equally implicated in wrongdoing as well, either failing to act or being pointed as an enabler of sorts.
Yeah, and I mean, what are the other areas of major concern that has been found in this time around with the perception? I mean, when you speak to people around corruption, they say there's no consequence, for example.
Sure, I think that's the biggest problem. One, we've seen the Commission of Inquiry being completed and a report being submitted. But there's been very little consequence. I mean, firstly, we haven't seen the sort of higher profile arrests that we may have hoped for. The prosecutions that lead to convictions have not been happening at a very positive pace. So it seems that we seem to find ourselves still stuck at a point of rhetoric, and that is quite disturbing. And those, unfortunately, who have been implicated are, by and large, still in Parliament, and some have retained their positions as well. So those are some of the negative impacts that we have seen, and that have contributed to the index. But there's also a very bleak global picture that the index points to, that of stagnation. We know that a majority of countries have not moved at all in the index. about 124 countries have remained stagnant. 31 of those have declined. 25 of those have shown little improvement. And some of these are of course, African countries. We know that in terms of the regional ranking, the sub-Saharan region is ranked very low. It has a global average of 32, which is the lowest average. But there are concerns, particularly of those countries that tend to have a higher ranking in the index, because that is where most of the tax havens are. This is where most of the illicit funds find themselves. So those higher ranking countries are implicated in being tax havens, and actually, if you may, they are the ones who enable corruption in those lowly ranked countries.